Cool, appreciate you tuning in. My name's Luther. I do real estate here in the Kansas City area. Some of y'all know, real estate broker, real estate investor, and over the last decade plus, been working closely with investors, selling property, managing it, renovating it, investing in it, sourcing and securing capital, and the fundamentals of investing in residential real estate is my jam. All right, so a big thing that I talk about on this channel is capital strategy and operations for real estate investing. All right, so if you're tuned in, there's a chance that you are currently investing or selling real estate, or you aspire to do either or, okay? And so tune in. Some of the stuff may help you, okay, get through the process a little bit faster, maybe avoid some pitfalls and so forth. So in today's session, I want to talk about the operations piece, all right? And in particular, working with contractors, okay? So as real estate investors, most of the time we're looking at either buy and hold or fix and flip, okay? So with either of those that we choose to do, there's a very good chance that there's going to be renovation needs or construction needs. Even if it's a small make-ready type of project, we're going to need to hire a contractor, in a lot of cases, multiple contractors. And so that's what this session is about. And it'll probably turn into a series. So in this first one, I just want to talk about some main things that I think about, some things that I've gone through, and then I could talk about how we work through some of our renovation projects as well. Okay, so fix it, flip, buy and hold. BRRRR strategy, as some of y'all know, one of the biggest pain points, okay, that I have seen and experienced has to deal with getting through renovation projects, okay? Besides that, another big pain point is property management, which again, you're gonna be working with someone handy or a contractor for property management too, all right? And so how do you do that, right? You as an investor, depending on your operation, depending on your capital, depending on your strategy, what you're looking to do, how you want to place capital and so forth, you got to decide, like, all right, are you going to be investing out of state or are you going to be investing in your market? That alone is huge, okay? And I could tell you, and lots of investors will tell you too, investing in your own state or close to where you live, that alone, if you're taking on renovation projects, will help you so much, okay? And so if you are investing out of state, that adds some extra elements that you are going to be out of control of. And so you got to determine, all right, if you're in state and you're handy or you're a contractor, or you might be a licensed general contractor of sorts, or you might be a licensed trade person of sorts, that is going to be super helpful. Okay, and I've said it in the past, some of the best investors that I know are contractors, okay, or they work closely with contractors. Go figure, they might even be partnered with contractors for various reasons, as you will soon see in your real estate investing journey if you have yet to see it, all right? So in-state, out-of-state, all right? Are you gonna be hands-on in some type of way, or are you going to outsource all of it or most of it, okay? If you are out of state, and I'll use Kansas City as the example because this has been a huge part of what I've done throughout the years. For whatever reasons, Kansas City has attracted a lot of out-of-state investors because of our market, because of the cash flow opportunity, the entry, the cost, the barrier to entry is relatively low. And then there's opportunities to do both short-term, and long-term investments, and they've performed very, very well. And so that's been what I've done, is working with a lot of out-of-state investors, from the sales and the leasing to the maintenance coordinating and the property management, and then the renovation projects, overseeing construction. All right, so that's been a huge part of what I've done. And up to this point, I think I've been a part of maybe 80 plus renovation projects, mostly single family homes in and around Kansas City, some smaller multifamily, but mostly single family home investments that me or my clients have held for the long run, all right? So in some cases, we did some short-term fix and flip, that sort of thing, wholesale as well, all right? But if you're wanting to help other investors do this, if you're selling real estate or you're investing in real estate and you're taking on these projects, you gotta determine, okay, if, you know, for me working with the investors that I've worked with who are out of state, I'm the agent or the broker, so I'm usually the contact person, right? I help them with the acquisition. And then fortunately, I have been plugged in with contractors pretty much from the beginning, all right? And so my clients knew that, okay, Luther can assist with the acquisition and he could facilitate and help oversee things with the renovation, okay? So me in my position, I'm more of the leader or CEO or salesperson, administrating, you know, pointing and directing type of thing. I'm not super handy. I'm not real hands-on when it comes to the construction aspect. And some of y'all will relate because you're working your job, you got your family, maybe you have another business. You may not necessarily have the time or the know-how, okay? So for your situation is definitely for my situation, I knew that I would need to collaborate closely with a general contractor and multiple contractors. So that's what I've done, all right? And so when I work with a contractor, and again, back to my background and how I operate, you again have to choose how you want to operate. But I knew that because my time and energy was focused elsewhere on stuff that would produce better for me and my business, I knew that I was going to need to bring in a leader for the construction aspect, a GC or a contractor who has experience. They have their own crew, or at least one crew. And I could communicate with them. I usually would walk the property and do the initial scope of work, okay? And then I can connect with the contractor or the GC, and I'm gonna walk the property with them, okay? And then they're going to do a more detailed scope of work with my instruction and guidance. And then we're gonna have a contract. We're gonna have a renovation agreement of sorts stating not only what items are going to be taken care of, fixed, repaired, replaced, and whatnot, but also stating, okay, here's the plan for how we are going to issue the renovation draws, because we're not going to give them all the money up front, okay? So that's a big thing. And I smile and kind of chuckle because there are countless stories of investors who gave a contractor a large sum of money, and that was the last time that they saw that contractor. So you do not want to make that mistake, all right? So just be mindful. The scopes of work, however you do that process, the renovation agreement or the renovation contract is key, and then mapping out how you are going to handle the renovation draws, okay? So just for context, and again, you may be handy. You may be investing in state. You may not invest out of state. You may not have a realtor. There's different roles that you can fill, right? Hopefully not too many hats that you're wearing, but depending on how you operate, all right? So for context, how we did it, right? And it's worked pretty darn well with the projects that we've done is scope of work, renovation agreement. And I like giving my contractors a little runway. Okay, so that means I'm getting them after things are documented, after things are planned and lined up. And because I work with leaders or you know, rather responsible contractors who have their own property, they have their own business, in some cases they have their own investments, that's who I like rolling with, because I don't necessarily have to be quite as involved in the process. I'm not necessarily going to be on site every single day, babysitting the contractors, the subcontractors, and so forth for that reason, right? Because I hired a crew leader, because I hired a GC, because I hired someone who's more independent and has their stuff together. Now be mindful, I do pay a little bit extra for that. So you have to, again, determine based on your capital strategy and how you want to operate. It may not necessarily be feasible for you early on to be able to do that. So, and this is definitely going to probably change as you grow your business and you grow your investment portfolio and your operation and so forth. All right. So back to what I was saying, I like to get my GC or crew leader at least 5 to 10 grand after things are documented and planned out. So that way they have some runway. They do not, because you have to understand, when you're working with contractors, finding good ones, finding good leaders, things that you want to think about, right? They may not be able to front or cover the cost of the material and the beginning stages of the labor to their crew without a little assistance, right? Especially if they're gonna have other stuff going on, potentially other projects. Again, they have their own business, they have their family, they have their property, whatever they have going on. So the timing of it, knowing who your crew leader is or GC and communicating with them effectively, getting them on board and knowing that they aren't going to be overwhelmed by taking on this next project and so forth. And then also understanding that they may not be able to, most human beings, let alone contractors and so forth, when they accept a project, they may not necessarily be able to front the cost of the materials and at least the first, maybe second draw on their own. So you gotta work with them and hopefully get them a little something, right? If you can negotiate it and get it set up to where they do end up starting the project without receiving anything from you as the investor. So that means that they're gonna front, they're gonna go get the materials at the supply store. Maybe they have a line of credit, maybe they have a credit card, and they just so happen to be in a position to where they can front, cover those costs for you, get the materials, start the project, get through the project. They're gonna have to pay not only for the materials, there's time and energy, and then they also are gonna have to pay their crew, the subcontractors and so forth, to get the ball rolling. And then if they do front those costs, right, then they're gonna have to coordinate with you to get reimbursed. And so it can get convoluted, it can get messy, it can get nasty, and you just have to understand. And this is why, there's risk involved with taking on renovation projects, whether you want to do buy and hold or fix and flip. And I'm emphasizing this because it seems really sexy. I'll admit it is kind of fun to take something, a property, a house that's rough, and you got the before pictures, and then you're going through the process, you get the after. It's really pretty cool, it's pretty sexy. And I say, like, HGTV kind of messed it up for us as real estate practitioners and those that have been in the game for a while and those who are serious players, because it's not what it seems. It's not as cracked up as it, is. It's not all that is what I'm saying, basically. So it's tough, it's challenging, there's risk involved. And so being able to maneuver through the process is part of the operations, the construction, working with your contractors. You have to determine, based on the capital too, it all ties it together, the capital, the strategy, and operations, and getting through that process. You may not be in the capital that you have on up front, right, or the lack thereof. If you don't have much up front and you're relying on a private money lender or a hard money lender to fund the purchase and all of the renovation, well, that's even more risk, because not only are you going to have to wait to get your contractors paid or your crew paid, but that also means that you're going to have to find a contractor or a crew to essentially front, like I mentioned before, the initial materials and the initial labor to get through at least the first and maybe the second draw, okay? And then once they fronted that, right, you go in with no money, you got a hard money loan, or you got a private money lender. They're covering all the costs. So that means, like, all right, you've acquired the property, You got to find the right contractor who's willing to front this stuff for you. Then you got to get through the process, getting through that first draw, getting through the second part of the renovation, coordinating with your lender, then getting your contractors paid. So that's it's a dance. You got to really be on point. When I'm working a project for or with a partner or with a client, I'm gonna be, in Kansas City, I don't like doing projects that are more than 30 minutes away for all the reasons that I've mentioned and then some. And when I'm working through a project, I'm gonna be on site every single week, at least once a week on average, until we're done, done, right? And I'm gonna pop up on that project, and no one's gonna know that I'm coming in some cases too, because just because you have a good contractor, a good crew leader, sometimes there's a disconnect between them and the subcontractors. So I know that my GC, there's two main ones that I've been working with for the last few years now. They're solid. Sometimes they don't necessarily know everything that's going on with their subs and so forth. They don't necessarily know, what's going on with the utilities and whatnot. They may not know, like, hey, when I popped up last time, it was a Saturday afternoon, nobody was on site. And I just cut the GC, or I sent a check, or I just wired them 10 racks. So they got the money, right? And I go there on a Saturday afternoon or maybe a Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. and nobody's there. Could be a problem. So these are things I'm trying to get y'all to think as you're doing this thing. If it's not going to be you here on site or there on site doing it, then who is going to be in your corner on your team? Hopefully they have a vested interest. And again, that's why I prefer the JV partnership, okay? Or I prefer some type of partnership where there's someone involved who has a vested interest in seeing to it that the thing performs and becomes profitable, however that looks, right? Because the reality of it, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with properties, we're dealing with personalities, we're dealing with the economy and things that are out of our control type stuff. And so you gotta be on point with this. So if you're gonna hire someone to oversee a project and they don't necessarily have a vested interest, like, yeah, they're gonna, hopefully you find someone good who's been somewhat vetted, or they've shown that they can do good things with a history of projects or investments or business or whatever, right? But you still gotta keep them accountable, right? Type of stuff. So you just have to figure it out. Like in and around Kansas City, we've kind of figured out what works well for us. So again, hopefully this will get you to think about how you want to operate, because again, this is one of the biggest pain points, and this can make or break any deal. And in fact, it could land you in court or set you back, 5 figures, and the list goes on. So you got to think about, beyond just finding a really good opportunity and then beyond getting it funded, you got to think about the operations. That's what I'm digging into here. And getting through renovation projects is huge, so important. Okay, so a lot of the great investors that I know, I mentioned before, GC their own projects. That's huge. I think that if you are in that space and can do it, then do it for sure, because that way what's going on with the project. You're going to be on site, and then hopefully you're getting yourself paid along the way to be able to run the operation, to GC the project. Because if you're doing fix and flip and even buy and hold in some cases, right, there's a chance that you may break even or not make any money, or you have capital tied up in the investment that you have to keep for years. Granted, it may cash flows, that sort of thing. But if you're not paying yourself as an operator or a GC or someone running the company, and you're doing the burst strategy and you're doing fix and flip, and however you pay yourself somehow, whether it's salary, a draw each month, or you know, when the renovation draws go out, you pay yourself something, because you're talking 90 days to 9 months is what one of my mentors states. When you're talking closing a deal, okay, you might be waiting 90 days to 9 months to get paid, if not longer, okay? So don't want to get off track. I'm here to talk about renovation projects, getting through those, okay? So I mentioned, you know, not just finding the opportunity, I mentioned acquiring it. I mentioned, you know, finding a good contractor, or if you're going to be the contractor type of thing. And then I mentioned the draws, okay? So with the renovation draws, as I mentioned before, it's like a dance. I see real estate investing and being an entrepreneur, it's like art and science mixed together, all right? And so when you are going through the renovation process and let's say you found a good GC and you're investing out of state, however you set it up, and let's say you found someone to front the cost of the first draw, potentially the second draw too, right? Then you got to coordinate with your backer, whether it's a private money lender or a hard money lender. And then that hard money lender usually is going to need to, they may not necessarily need to send somebody out to the property to verify what was done, what was said was done, type of thing, but they probably are going to definitely want to see invoices, pictures, and some type of documentation of what's completed, and then they're going to verify that somehow, right? So if your contractor gets through the first and second draw, materials and labor, you could be talking 10, 20, maybe 30 grand that contractor has fronted or paid from their end out of their costs, however that looks, that you then have to get the backer, the private money lender or the hard money lender, to agree that, okay, yeah, that 10, 20, 30 grand, you said it was done. However the backer verifies it, then they're gonna release the funds maybe to you as the investor, or they may, probably you as the investor, or they may have it set up to where it goes to the contractor to get them settled. Well, it doesn't always fall into place very perfectly. In fact, in a lot of cases, the draw monies that come through from the backer or the lender aren't enough to cover what the contractor fronted, those costs. Or if on the flip side, if you end up, you know, getting the contractors paid a little something up front to get the ball rolling, right? Issue them 5 grand, then another 10 grand, right? Then another 5 grand. There's still, you know, a chance that when you go to the backer to get reimbursed, that they may not give you that full amount, because they may see some discrepancies between what was actually done and what was said got done. Are you with me? All right. So it goes pretty deep. And again, this is why operations is so key. I don't hear many investors talking about this stuff. The investors that I do hear talk about rehab projects and construction say they hate it. And I'm like, dang, bro, like, why are you doing this shit over and over again then, right? Just find a better way to do it, type of thing. I don't know. That's just me. But again, hopefully this is encouraging and inspiring y'all to go take action. We're here in the Kansas City market. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to know more about how we're making this thing happen. I've helped over 100 investors in one way or another over the last decade plus. As I mentioned before, as a rehab project manager type of person, as a real estate broker who's helped countless investors do this and done it with partners on my own portfolio to get me to where I am now. About 80 plus projects. We've managed a couple 100 plus units in management, property management in the past, type of thing. So sharing some of this experience, knowledge, want to educate, inspire, collaborate with some of y'all out there so you can go move forward with your investments, putting money to work, or you're a practitioner, you're helping other investors through the process. So plug in. Again, I'm gonna probably do more videos on getting through renovation projects, but I just wanted to do a general overview, get you familiar with the process and how we like to do it, and then we'll go from there. All right, so thanks again for tuning in. By the way, today is Monday, April 7th, 2025 already. This is show number 42, so those that have been tracking, stay plugged in. Appreciate you. All right, stay blessed. Peace.